Well, obviously we've met before briefly at your book signing before about it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
So,
I think it was closer to three. Yeah,
oh
well,
my
yeah.
God,
Well, yeah, but yeah, I think it was my second one that I did at the library. So yeah, a couple of years ago anyway.
definitely. This is my buddy Cooley, by the way.
Hi.
So, so,
Wonderful to meet you, sweetheart.
Nice to meet you.
I mean, I guess what we wanted to kind of talk about today is, obviously, some of the experiences that you've been through. I think everybody by now has heard or seen The Conjuring, which it's based on your story somewhat. so,
Yeah,
you know, and
loosely from what I hear.
yeah, and I guess that's one of the things that I wanted to kind of jump into was, since everybody has seen The Conjuring and they're familiar with it, what are your feelings about the film and so forth?
Well, I think that The Conjuring is a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
For what it is, it's very compelling, very thought provoking, and in very broad, sweeping strokes, it does cover our story.
Mm-hmm.
In the respect that, the big issues, good conquers evil, love conquers fear. The Perron family had an extreme haunting that they all survived. All of that is correct. There are elements of truth scattered throughout the film, but it was predominantly based on the case files and was meant to be based on the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren. And they took liberties with their case files, and their case file is different than our story. They only came to the house maybe 5 or 6 times over the course of a year and a half. So, that amount of time, they had a little bit of an experience of the farm, but we lived there for 7 years, 365 days a year. So, there were many, many things that they didn't even know. So, what I did was I turned over as much information as I could to the screenwriters, to the producers, hoping that it would be an authentic telling of the story, hoping beyond hope that when I signed over the rights to our names and likenesses, that they would do their best to tell the truth. But this was a classic case where the truth is literally stranger than fiction. And they didn't think that the audience could handle it, that the truth was just too intense, that what happened to my mother in that house couldn't even be reproduced with CGI.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did was they took volume one was already in the public domain. I gave them tons of anything pertinent from volume two. I gave them 75 pages in treatment, a full timeline of events that happened in the house, and remained open to answering all of their questions and consulted on the film. However, the screenwriters had to cherry pick. It was just way more information than they could ever cram
Right.
into a 2-hour film. So they cherry picked, and they took, a little bit of what I gave them and more of what they had from Mrs. Warren. And even she said, as we were watching the film together at a private screening about 3 months before it actually went into the national market, she said it didn't happen that way. I didn't tell them that it happened that way. Mm-hmm. And I just had to pat her hand and say, I know. She didn't want me to think that she had done anything to misrepresent the story.
Right.
Because she knew that my mother didn't go seeking them out, that actually Keith Johnson is the one that sought them out and told them that we were having a problem. And we still to this day don't know how he knew to show up at the house, but he did. He said my mother called him. She said she never called anybody. But someone or something brought Keith Johnson into the fold in 1973. And whoever it was or whatever it was that contacted him used my mother's voice. And I know that sounds bizarre,
Right.
but there have been many cases of spirits that actually will throw another person's voice. And I've even had that experience myself with Bathsheba. The first time that I spoke with her doing a spirit box session with George Lopez, She identified herself, but she used my voice. And he said, no, absolutely not. You use your own voice. And when
That is
she
so
came back,
crazy.
yeah, and when she came back, she sounded like a child. She just like almost so soft spoken, such a sweet, high pitched voice that there was nothing evil about it. She
Mhm.
really, but it was almost like she didn't want to be known for who she really was. But I knew that voice from my childhood. I recognized it immediately. I said, "That's her, George. That's her from the house."
Mhm.
And a lot of times people who do spirit box sessions will be like, we don't know exactly who we're talking to. And it's true.
Right.
We don't. Those of us who do investigation and, conduct research can't say, there is no such thing as an expert in the paranormal. There is no such thing. We're all finding our way in the dark. We all are.
Mhm.
If our family doesn't know the answers to these questions, nobody on this planet does, because we lived immersed with spirit for 10 full years. So, getting back to that, the film has sprinklings and what I call cosmic kisses. There are elements in the film that, after they sent the screenplay back 7 times to have it toned down, this was a case where Hollywood didn't really dare tell the whole truth. It freaked them out. So they had the screenwriters, Chad and Carrie Hayes, mute that story and bring it down to what The Conjuring is now. The Conjuring is a very, very good and artfully made film, and certainly compelling. But anybody that wants to know the real story, all they have to do is Google my last name,
Mm.
and up pop the books. I mean, they're all over the world. So if you want the fine lines of history, you can get it in the books. But in the grand sweeping strokes, they covered as much ground as they could. However, they did blame everything on Bathsheba. My mother was never possessed. My mother was attacked. It didn't happen in the cellar. It happened in the dining room. My mother would never have done anything to hurt her children ever in a million years.
Right.
And the Warrens came to us. We didn't seek them out. The Catholic Church turned its back on us. It wasn't the other way around. We were not godless heathens. We were not Perrin pagans. We were, and the film set it up that way, like we were godless and as a family, and that the Warrens were the devout Roman Catholics, and that does an injustice, I think, Tony. It does an injustice to everybody that's had an experience in the paranormal. It's almost like an indictment
Right.
is cast. Like, if you don't have faith, if you don't have proper faith, if you weren't raised right, then, you're subject to this kind of supernatural intervention. And that's a crock. Anybody that is worth their salt and in terms of investigation knows that it is very often people who are deeply spiritual who are contacted and who are sometimes imposed upon, almost as if it's some kind of a cosmic test. I don't know what it means, but my father was born and raised Catholic. He went to parochial school. He was an altar boy for his entire childhood. He was on his way to the priesthood when he joined the army and met my mother, the Navy actually, during the Korean War. And he met my mother during a trip with a friend of his to Georgia. And that was it. I mean, they courted for 4 years. They courted for 4 years. And she was only 15 when he met her. I mean, absolutely, that was it. But he knew she was the one. He knew. And when she was 19, she and my father married. She converted to Catholicism. All of us were baptized and confirmed into the church. And there was just no reason to misrepresent us. That portrayal was inaccurate.
Right.
And my mother did take exception to that. But there were things in that film that they couldn't possibly have known about, things they could not have known about. Out of 25,000 different colonial wallpaper prints, they chose the one print to put in that house that we had in our house, and they never saw any interior shots of the house. That was one thing. Another is that When I was 13, when I turned 13 years old, my mother's friend Fran gave me a picture of a folk art picture of a white cat that we found for 50 cents at a flea market in Foster, the next town over from Burrowville. And my mom didn't have 50 cents to buy it for me, and I loved it. So Fran bought it for me for my birthday, and it's hanging right here on my wall right now. And as the camera rounds into Shanley Caswell's bedroom, who played me in the movie, there it is, sitting on her mantel board. There is no conceivable way that anybody working on that film knew that I had that picture. No way. And yet there it was on the mantel board. Cindy running through the house that Mackenzie Foy played Cindy, running through the house holding wind chimes that she was heading for the back porch to hang.
Yeah.
We had a set that was almost identical. I mean, virtually identical to that set of wind chimes that was hanging on our porch. The rocking chair on the porch was always there. I mean, one thing after another. I never told them that our dog died inexplicably as soon as we moved to the farm, and yet it was there in the movie. I never told them that. I didn't even put it in the book because I thought it was too damn depressing. Right. After everything that had happened in Cumberland before we actually got to Harrissville, all these years later, I still couldn't write about it. It still chokes me up to talk about it. It was such a terrible thing. And it was like a pallor of death around us at that farm as soon as we moved in, but there are things about the movie that there's no other way that our story could have made it out into the world, literally worldwide, had it not been for The Conjuring. There's just no other way. So anybody that really wants to know the truth, they can get it from the books. They find it very quickly and easily.
Now, I guess my another question would be the fact that this happened to your family years ago, and did you have any reservations, or why did you wait, or did your family decide to wait so long to tell the story? Just because it was obviously a traumatic experience over 7 years, but was it something that was like painful to go back and relive when you were writing the books, or is there a reason? Like, what were your reservations?
Well, we lived in the farm for almost full 10 years. It took 7 years to write and edit and publish all 3 of the books. Wow. So it took almost as long as we actually lived in the farm to tell the story. When I started writing the books, which actually was only meant to be one, but it was just such a big story. It got away from me, and my publisher said, let's make this a trilogy because it's just more than people can take in. In one sitting. So I started writing it on August 7th of 2007. It was like a bell went off in my head. It was the first day of vacation for me from my job. I worked as a counselor at Harmony Hill School, school for behaviorally disordered adolescent boys. Tough job, but I really loved it. I really did love it. Harmony Hill is a great place. And they do great work. And I was a big part of that for a long time, and very happy doing my job, and very happy. I was a member of the theater company of Rhode Island for more than 20 years. Right. I had gotten with them in 1987 with Michael Thurber, and I just stayed with the company for all those years, and 2 decades plus. And I had a great life, and I was very satisfied, very happy. I lived in Harmony, Rhode Island, right down on Waterman Lake, right near the best ice cream on the planet, right. Right. I'm still trying to get it off my hips. No kidding. And I'll tell you something. It was as close to perfect a life as anybody could have. Wonderful friends. Did as I pleased. It was a great life. And then one day I woke up and I wasn't satisfied anymore. I knew that I had a higher calling. I had a greater mission. And it was as though an old-fashioned alarm clock went off in my head. Like, it's time now. Now it's time. I'm ready. The world's ready. And I didn't know what it meant. I didn't even know if it would ever come to fruition, if it was just a lark. and I didn't tell anybody in my family because I didn't want anybody to discourage me from at least trying.
Right.
And I had never published a book before. I've been a writer all my life, but I never really tried to publish anything. I had a few poems and a few short stories published over the years, but not like this. 1,500 pages, 3 books, I mean, it was a big deal. And, I can't explain it other than I just knew that something spoke to me. And I know that sounds woo-woo, but it's actually true. It's what happened. And the thing that's most interesting of all is publishing volume 3 after I'd already been through volume 1 and volume 2. I thought volume 3 is going to be a breeze. Oh, it's going to be so easy. And it was the toughest book of all to do. And it seemed like there was just one obstacle after another, getting copyright permissions and, all kinds of stuff for a special poem that I had used and quotations and making sure that they were all copied, there was no infringement. And there was, I had to get all kinds because it was going to be so well received so quickly because so many people were waiting for it. Right. My publisher was really stringent about making sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed and it was best foot forward. And they worked very closely with me to make sure that I got it exactly the way that I pleased. But I had submitted my text for layout and all of that in like late April or early May. And that book didn't come out until August 7th, 2014. 7 years to the day.
That's insane.
7 years to the day that I started it. And I knew I was on the phone with George Lopez, my power partner, when my email popped up and came through and congratulations, your book has gone live. And I was like, you know what? It's August 7th. Wow. That date really rings a bell with me. What is it? And I'm like, hold on. I'm going went into my closet in my bedroom and I pulled down my old meme trunk. And that's where I keep all my calendars year after year. I keep all my calendars because I always write every major event on my calendar and I can prove it. There you go. That's what it looks like. How scary is that? And I said, George, just hold on a minute, man. I got to check this out. This is too weird for words. And I went in and I pulled out the '07 calendar, and right on August 7th, it said, and so it begins.
That's insane. That is insane. I mean, out of all of the time that you've spent in that house and the books that you've written, are there any experiences that really stand out to you?
Well, there are many, many things that happened in the house that I will never, ever forget. But I can tell you that I didn't have the same issues. And I know you know this from reading the first 2.
Right. I
didn't have the same issues as other members of my family did. And I can't explain that other than I was never targeted. I never was. I was communicated with regularly, but I was never targeted. Only once did something happen to me that was really bad, and Cindy saw it happen, but I didn't have any awareness of it at all. It actually, whatever it was, came after Cindy. But she, in a way, she distracted it from whatever it was doing to me. And that was a very, very intense chapter. I can't remember the title of that chapter, but that was a very intense experience, but I have no recollection of it. That comes straight from Cindy because she was the one that tangled with it. Right. But I would have to say of everything that happened at the farm, the thing that most impaled my memory was the night of the seance that was represented in the film as an exorcism. By the way, Ed Warren would never have tried to conduct an exorcism by himself. Lorraine was like beside herself. She saw that.
Yeah, definitely.
Never. No, he had way too much respect for the exorcists of the Catholic Church. And he was the only human being on the planet who was a layman at the time, that was a layman that had been trained through the Catholic Church to assist in exorcisms. And that was all he was qualified to do at that point. I don't know if he progressed beyond that later in life, but at that time, under no circumstances would he have done that. And so that was another mischaracterization in the film done just strictly for dramatic purposes. But the thing that stands out to me is the night of the seance, because we weren't supposed to be there. My mother tried the best she could to get all of us out of the house when she realized that Ed and Lorraine were coming. And she had no idea they were bringing a caravan with them. They gave her no indication. I think because if they had told her that it wasn't just going to be them and that they were coming with a very specific intent, she would have told them, no, do not come. And my father didn't want them there, and he was furious, absolutely livid when they showed up in 2 or 3 cars. I can't remember exactly, but she was, quick like a bunny trying to get us out of the house. But it was a Friday night. All of our friends were already off doing something else, or they were with their families, and there was only Nancy was able to leave the house. The other 4 of us were there. And what the medium did, Mary Pastorella was the medium. And what she did that night, I do not fault Ed and Lorraine for. I fault her because I consider it spiritual malpractice to come into a supremely haunted house and then conjure spirits, to literally throw open wide the doors to the netherworld and invite everyone in so that she can identify who is whom and dispel them. That is absolutely beyond the pale dangerous. And my father wanted nothing to do with it. My mother was the most compromised in that house that night. She was the weakest link. She was the one that was attacked, not possessed. If she was technically possessed, it was for a very short amount of time. But I've seen possession, and it did not appear to me that that's what it was. It appeared to me that my mother's body was used as a conduit that night to communicate with everyone else that was in that room. And I saw the table levitate and then slam back down onto the floor so hard that there are still 4 marks in those wood floors from where the legs of that table hit that wood. And then my mother was levitated. Her body was twisted into a ball. She spoke in a language that is not present on this earth. She was writhing in pain. She was howling. She was screaming. She was obviously in agony. I thank God every day she has no memory of this event. Every day, I thank God Mom has no memory of that event, because that was horrific. And I watched her lifted up off the floor at least 2 feet in a probably 40-pound captain's chair made of solid rock maple. And in a split second, in a fraction of a second, she was tossed from one room into another, from the dining room to the middle of the parlor. And I heard her head, as did everyone else, heard her head strike that floor. And I thought that I had seen my mother die. And I will never, ever get over it. I will never get over it. In the same way that I will never, ever get over watching one of my friends plunge into the World Trade Center in an airliner and die before my eyes. I'll never get over that, ever. So there are things that happen in life that are literally seared into our brains, into our memories. And when I was writing the books, I thought, I'm going to have to do an awful lot of cross comparison here, because it's been so many years and there's so many of us. And, Chris is going to remember it differently than Nancy did, differently than Cindy did. It's just the nature of memory. And when I was done interviewing everybody about their experiences and about our group experiences in the house, it turns out of 1,500 pages, I had to change one thing. I had one event, the bleeding orange. I had that. I think I had it in the spring, and it happened in the fall, or vice versa. I remember I had to go into the manuscript and change which season that event occurred in.
Hmm.
I could not remember the year precisely, but I knew, I wanted to at least identify the season. And when I was going through the book with my mother, she's like, no, 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 that happened, okay. So, excuse me. It was, it was really an amazing thing. And getting back to answering your question fully about any reluctance or reticence in my family, my parents were both squarely behind it, and which is surprising because my mother, I thought would be the one to be like, nope, not revisiting it, not going back there again, not. And when I told her that I was writing the story, she said, we left the farmhouse, but the farm will never leave us. And this is not the kind of story that one should rightfully take to the grave. And as we began to exhume our spirits in order to tell this story, she said to me one day, we spent 30 years trying to bury our dead, and it's amazing how close to the surface they were buried.
I mean, you've been back to the house since then. I know that there's a video online where you've kind of interviewed the woman who lives there now with her husband. I know that there's a lot of things going around right now. I was even online that and in the news that I guess they're trying to sue Warner Brothers for the movie and stuff. And do you? I mean, I guess my question would be, do you agree with that? I mean, because if it's based on a true story, I feel like there are instances where people are going to try to find out where this was, because there are people who have no respect for others' property. Do you think that case is valid? I mean, has that been authenticated by the people that live in the house? I mean, have they had tons of people there?
Well, I know a lot. I know a lot, and some of it probably because there is a legal case pending.
Yeah.
I probably should not comment much.
Right.
But I will tell you that I don't think she's got a legal leg to stand on. I could be wrong.
Right.
As far as I know, I have a legal document that was signed years ago by she and her husband, giving me permission to use every image, every piece of video, every piece of audio, every snapshot, anything that I wanted. I went to that house numerous times. I was friends with her for 28 years before the film opened, and that changed everything. She knew our story, and she knew our story well. How I met her was she walked into my restaurant years before, and she recognized my business partner, Gail. And she said, "Oh my God, Gail, is that you?" And she's like, "Oh my God, Norma, is that you?" They hadn't seen each other in years and years. She says, "Oh my God, Gail, you'll never believe it. I just bought an old haunted house up on Round Top Road in Harrissville." I knew exactly what house she was talking about. She described it as a haunted house. She told me she bought it specifically because of what she had heard of inklings of our story from the 70s, what she had heard from that house.
Why would you want to move into a house when the family had described the horror that they went through? I mean, that seems like the one reason not to move there. So, and I mean, I saw her on the news and she admitted that things still happen there. So,
yes.
I mean, not as to the extent, but.
I really don't think she has anything to stand on here because, she was absolutely, none of my readers for the first 2 volumes of books came out. Nobody. She never ever told me that any of my readers ever imposed on her or her husband or on that property. And, I genuinely care for her husband. He is a wonderful, wonderful human being, absolutely lovely man. And, the last thing in the world that I ever wanted was for any harm to come to either of them ever. But there were hundreds, if not thousands, of photographs of my family at that farm or subsequent pictures of the place that were all over online for years before The Conjuring opened. And then, of course, the Lunatic Fringe came out. But I have a friend who's friends with the Burrillville police, and they said, I think that they got 2 calls, maybe 2 or 3 calls a week after the film opened, and that was it. That there was a lot of traffic and drive-by stuff, but all of that had died down. Subsequently, that there hasn't really been a whole lot of stuff going on. That the worst thing that happened was some idiot decided to take a crowbar or a baseball bat to Bathsheba Sherman's gravestone, but that was in downtown Harrissville, miles and miles away from the farm. I don't know everything that happened there because, quite frankly, a couple of days after the movie opened, she imploded our friendship. And the trust is gone, and I will never go back, and I will not. I might in time be able to forgive what she said and done, but I won't ever forget. She has deliberately tried to hurt me. I have more of a case than she does. I choose not to act on it. I have a defamation case. There's a YouTube video out there that calls my family liars and says we made it all up. And she knows that's not the case. She knows it. Right. She tried to get my mother to write a book with her for years. And my mother just finally said, Norma, no. What part of no don't you understand? No. But she tried to get my mother to come to the farm for years. My mother said, no, I'm not doing it. I will never, ever step foot back on that property again. She is the one that invited the Ghost Hunters, season 2, episode 7. It's all over the internet. You can find where she is admitting to all kinds of, they captured the plumbers. They're my friends. I love them.
Wait a minute, the Ghost Hunters went to that house?
Season 2, episode 7, the Sutcliffe investigation.
I didn't know that. Did they find anything?
They got the best evidence I've ever seen captured in that house.
Watch this. I had no idea.
As soon as this is over, we're watching it.
She invited one after another supernatural teams. Rise Up Paranormal investigated it several times. Near Paranormal with Keith Johnson and his group several times. Other groups have been there. Now, I ask you this, and I think this is a legitimate and a rational question. Why would you invite paranormal groups to your home if you think that it's not haunted? What are they exactly there to investigate?
Yeah, that's true.
Are you just, having them spend their own money on gasoline and stay up all night for absolutely nothing? For what? She told R.J. Heim things that happened when he put a piece together
I saw that.
Awesome. The Freaky Friday piece, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And then she admitted the banging on the door, which had happened to us as well. She knew about that. She knew about everything. She went so far as not only to call us liars. Now, I'm a big girl and I can take care of myself. But my mother has been to hell and back in this life. Nobody calls my mother a liar unless those are fighting words. Yeah. And that was the end of our friendship. It was over. And there is no going back and there is no forgiveness. She walked into the Ocean State Paracon in July and did everything that she could to disrupt it and was removed from the premises. Removed. We're there trying to raise money for the Wounded Warrior Project, and she's there trying to make a scene.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me into a pretty good question that I had. What do you say to people? Because you've had these experiences, you've given us the story, and you've come forward with everything. What do you say to people that are just complete skeptics, right? Like they just don't believe at all. So I am not personally a skeptic, but I am not what I would call a believer. It's for me, it's I've never seen a jackal in person. I've seen pictures.
But they exist.
Yeah. But right. That doesn't mean I don't believe they exist, right? But
yeah. So
I have an open mind. I'm curious, and we talk about it all the time on the show. But what do you say to the people that they just totally don't believe at all, and for a fact that this stuff is true?
Well, you used the proper verbiage. I know. I don't just believe. Right. I know. And there is a quantum leap of difference between the two. Right. The skeptics, there are 2 breeds of skeptics. There are real legitimate pragmatic skeptics who don't believe anything until they experience it themselves. And then there are trolls. Then there are people that go out there on the internet, mean-spirited, ugly, hateful, accusatory people who don't know us, who don't know our family at all, and yet cast aspersions. And I ignore them as if they were dead, because they are certainly dead to me. Real skeptics, I don't care. It's not my job to convince them.
Right.
You know, like my mother put my father up against a wall one day when he questioned her veracity on a description of something. And she said, you know, Roger, the spirit's existence is not contingent upon your belief in them. And she was absolutely correct in her assessment. Just like the night of the full moon, we all enjoy the light of the full moon, bask in the glory and the glow of it. But on the night of the new moon, does any of us suspect that it's no longer in the sky just because we can't see it?
Right.
It's there.
Yeah.
You know, so human beings, mere mortals, think that we live in a three-dimensional, five-sensory plane of action, when in fact, that is only part of our reality. We live in a multi-dimensional universe, and that farmhouse is a portal cleverly disguised as a farmhouse. So all I can tell you is that if a skeptic, I've never had a person come up to me and say, I don't believe in ghosts. But then again, they're not the kind that go to the Paracons anyway. And it's not my job to convince them. You know, I can say tongue in cheek, go spend one night in that farmhouse, and then, you know, I could say that and just, you know, light of the dark. But I think that they really are, in many respects, a driving force behind the work that gets done in this field in terms of research and conducting investigations, and compiling evidence, compounding evidence. They are the intelligent ones, the pragmatic ones, I think, are a driving force. They keep those wheels churning. You know, it's easy to dismiss this and dismiss, but after a while, this evidence keeps coming and coming and coming. I mean, I firmly believe that if all the paranormal investigators worldwide all put their very best evidence into one pool, one place where anyone in the world could wade through it, there would be no more skeptics. You know what? I think that we're in the midst of spiritual of consciousness. Human consciousness is being raised about many, many things, including our own existence as spirit from a realm that we get an occasional glimpse into, but it's also the realm from which we come and to which we will return when we perish from this vessel, this body. It's only that is ashes to ashes and dust to dust. I truly, truly believe, know that we exist beyond this mortal entity that we are, that with something beyond our existence is there, because I've seen it with my own eyes. So, and I believe what I saw, and I lived with, and communicated with, made contact with, as did everybody in our family. So I don't care what people say. None of us can afford to care what people say, or I would never have written the books in the first place. I knew what kind of scrutiny I would be putting myself under. And I knew there would be hate messages left, and there would be hate mail, and that my YouTube pages were going to get slammed with, oh my God, what drugs is she on? I don't care. I don't care. I really don't. I don't give a damn what they think. It's not my job to educate them. It's not my job to inform them. It's not my job. It's not my job. But for the people who do get it, they understand that they are now not perceiving a new reality. They're perceiving an old reality, but in a new way. You know, we're going from a black and white existence to a technicolor existence. We're making huge leaps in consciousness as a race. And that is part of the spiritual ascension. And I think that these books were timed specifically to help do that, to help people understand and consider the possibilities, and consider that we are not alone in the universe, and consider that there are multi-dimensions. You know, my mother was wasting away. My mother was under attack in that house. My mother was not herself in that house. She was having a hard time. And I'll tell you the incident that turned everything around for her, being the pragmatic Virgo, the intelligent, super intelligent woman that she is. The incident that changed everything for her was the night that I went into the kitchen to make her something to eat. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And she'd been in bed for hours and hours in her heated waterbed. She couldn't get warm. She was just being oppressed. And she came out of the room and she said, "I'm hungry." I said, "I'll make you something to eat right now." I was thrilled that she wanted to eat. And she asked me for coffee too. And I'm like, "Mom, coffee at 11 o'clock at night?" And she's like, "It's the nectar of the gods. Make me a pot of coffee." And so I did. And I had to walk the full length of the house from the parlor through the closed down dining room. Dining room was completely shut down for the night. All the lights were off. The front foyer hallway was all shut down. I had to go through the kitchen into the pantry, get the beef stew out of the refrigerator and heat it up on the stove because microwaves didn't exist yet. So I was in there for several minutes. And while I was in the kitchen preparing her something to eat, she went to put a log on the fire in the fireplace in the parlor. And she heard laughter behind her, and she turned around and looked into the dining room that I had just walked through. It was black. It was dark. And she saw a family sitting there having dinner, dressed in handmade clothes. I'm getting a message. I am getting a message right now. It's so weird. Dressed in handmade clothes, sitting at a table that was not our own, that had benches on both sides of it. A woman was standing at the fireplace cooking over a roaring fire, and that fireplace had been closed for at least 100 years when we bought the house, completely sealed up, center chimney gone out of there, not usable. And she's cooking and telling the kids to go sit down at the table to get their dinner, their stew. And there were two men sitting at the table, and one of them looked into the parlor, and he made eye contact with my mother, whose mouth was hanging open agape. And he just stared at her. And then he nudged the man beside him, just like the two of you sitting together. If you were to nudge Tony, just got his attention and pointed at my mother. And she was the ghost. And that's when it made sense to her. She was the ghost. They were peering into the future while she was looking into the past. And that is indicative of multidimensional skew lines, the intersection of multiple dimensions simultaneously.
Wow.
And there's your physics.
Right. That's insane.
And then it made sense. Then it made sense to her. And then she understood that we were sharing that house with many souls, and that it was only right to acknowledge them as such and to understand that we were actually the intruders. It was their house first. So we always treated them with the utmost of respect because Mom said so. And she said that all the spirits in the house were somehow in some way attached to the house. Bathsheba Sherman, to my knowledge, never lived in the house, although she was at the house when the baby that was in her care died. And, there was the inquest and she was let off the hook for that. They found a needle at the base of its skull. And she swore she had nothing to do. She would never have harmed that child. But in the court of public opinion, she was convicted. She was, she lived a miserable life. She had some attachment to the farm. We don't know exactly what it was. We don't know if it was familial, if it was just because they were neighbors, if it was because of what happened with the baby in the house. And Norma's coming out with all of this. I got all my information from the historical records. I got my information from the town historians. And she's put out this hateful video. I've never even watched it. I will not. I won't. I will not poison my mind with her rhetoric and it's crap. And, she's just saying, this isn't true and nobody died in this house. Really, really, Norma? Because there were 8 generations of people that lived and died in that house. And some of them never left, and she knows it. I don't mean to be angry about this, but, I pray for the woman. I do. You cannot live with spirits and then pretend they don't exist, and expect there will not be any repercussions, especially when the first thing she did when she walked into that house in the 1980s was try to make peace with the spirit so that she wouldn't have the same kind of manifestations that we did. She told me that. And then she goes to the national press, to the Associated Press, to UPI, and says that I never told her there was going to be a movie made about my stories. I've got it on film discussing it with her. Yeah. If all I have to do is call, I have friends. Believe me, I have friends. And all I have to do is say, release the B-roll.
Yeah.
All I have to do, release the B-roll.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
I could just send it to her attorney and let's get this over with real quick, because she won't have an attorney anymore. I don't want to go into too much depth here, but I don't think she's got a leg to stand on. And it wasn't my readers that attacked their house, and it wasn't my readers that infringed upon them, because my readers are intellectual people. They're gentle and kind people. They're insightful people. They are...
Whether it's the people that read the book or saw the movie or whatever it is, I mean, is it the movie or the book that's the cause of the issue, or the people that are actually, doing what they're doing, whatever it is, right? Like, it's not just because you read a book about something or you see a movie about something doesn't give you the right to intrude on somebody's home. Like, nobody in, like, the movie didn't say, oh, by the way, after the credits, stick around and we're going to give you the address, so you can go check this stuff out, right? Like,
no, and I never published the address. I never, yes, I had to put in the books that it was on Round Top Road in Harrissville, but she knew that. Right, she bought the books from me. She bought tons of books from me to give to her family and friends. If she didn't read it, then, I know her husband did. I know he did, because he commented to me on very specific things that were in the books that he found very fascinating. And he complimented me highly on my ability to tell our story and to tell it well and to tell it intellectually. But, keep in mind now, there's a certain amount of every population in the world that's just lunatics. They're just nuts.
Right.
And so the people who are reading my books, who are paying for the privilege to read the story, whether it's on Nook or Kindle or they're buying hard copy or softbound editions, these are people who are well educated. These are people who have an intrinsic curiosity about the story. But when you mass market something like a movie as a horror movie and millions of people see it, that ups the ante for the idiots in society. What I call the lunatic.
I mean, the Conjuring was that film was huge because it was done well. So I mean, if it was like a horror movie, that was bad, it could have been in the theater for 2 weeks, but it was in the theater all summer, so
all summer long. And then the DVD sold like hotcakes all over the world.
Exactly.
Still is. I mean, good luck finding it at this time of year. You go to your nearest Walmart or Target and see if they've got a copy.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
It was
funny
funny
talking
too.
Sequel, aren't they?
Well, the sequel was technically Annabelle, and like that movie is trash compared to the real story. I mean, like.
Well, and that's another thing that I can't say that I resented it, because it just didn't make sense to me. But they wove the story of that stupid doll into our story, and it had no place there. Yeah. And that tells you how cynical Hollywood is, because they used our story to set up their next movie.
Right.
And that's very unfortunate, because I will be answering that question for the rest of my life. Whoa, was Annabelle yours? Did you ever have, like, no. Yeah. That doll has nothing to do with our story. I never laid eyes on the doll. I don't care to lay eyes on the doll. It was actually a Raggedy Ann doll. It was not this horrible thing that they created.
That's the other thing too. Like, I saw the movie and I looked at my buddy and I go, because we know the story, and I said, why did they choose, like, who would own that horrible looking doll?
I know.
Like, that doll is not something I would ever want to play with.
It looked like a Linda Blair action figure from The Exorcist or something, right?
That's exactly what it looked like. A Linda Blair action figure. Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, it was.
I know.
Let me give this to my 2-year-old. She's gonna love it.
Yeah, The other thing, the other thing I thought was interesting. You talk about trying to weave in like other movies. I mean, at the end of the film, they're like, oh, we got a call about a case in Long Island, and that's Amityville, and it's like
Amityville.
they're trying to bring in all these different stories that, I mean, it technically was a case that Ed and Lorraine Warren worked on, but man, it was just I thought it was kind of a weak plug, to try to weave that in like that, but. So.
Well, I don't fault the screenwriters. They tried and tried and tried to tell our story. They were forced to cherry pick little images and create a whole third story. Mm-hmm. The Warrens never moved in with us. Oh my God, they wouldn't have made it 24 hours in that house with this many kids running around and all the hellacious stuff going on in that. They wouldn't have made it. It was, and they tried to make it look like that they solved all of our problems, but actually their presence in the house really stirred things up a lot. And the night of the seance, whatever it was that came through and entered my mother for that short period of time and spoke to everyone in that room, the priest was standing in the corner of the dining room, shaking, literally visibly trembling. He was so terrified. He wasn't interceding on my mother's behalf. He couldn't figure out how to get out of that house fast enough. Mm-hmm. That's the reality of what actually happened, but it doesn't reflect well on the Warrens. And so that's not the way the story was told. I don't really hold anything against them. I don't think that they were there to exploit us. I think that they were trying to help us, but they were in over their heads right from the inception. And Lorraine even admitted that to me now. And I told her several years ago, I said, at some point that house is going to go back on the market again. And I want to buy it, open it as a center for supernatural study. I don't want to live, but I want to open it to the world. And she's like, oh my God, no. She burst into tears. It was right after we had seen the film. And she burst into tears and threw her arms around me. And this poor little 89-year-old woman at the time. And she's like, Andrea, you don't understand. That house is calling you back. If you go back to that house, you'll never leave alive. That house, your parents bought that house because of you. And, I don't know if that's absolutely true, but I do know that I saw something in that house that changed the way that I thought about everything. And it wasn't a bad experience. It was actually a very enlightening experience, hence the title, House of Darkness, House of Light. It was both. But I came home for it was just my birthday this past weekend, but I came home for my 17th birthday, or to turn 18, came home from college. And I'd come from, my father had picked me up from the airport, and I was standing on the hearthstone, and I couldn't get warm. And everybody in the house was sitting in the adjacent dining room getting ready to have dinner. And my father was at the head of the table, and my mother's like, come and eat. But I had eaten on the plane back in the day when they actually served food on planes. And, those days are long gone. You're too young to remember.
Oh. No, all I get is like peanuts and pretzels.
Yeah, right.
Like in a bag
I'm talking about real food on a tray, hot.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was a time in America when that was the case. And you could smoke a cigarette on the plane and nobody could say a thing to you. I had eaten, but I was just so cold. And I didn't realize that it was supernatural cold. I thought I was just overtired. And I'm standing in front of the fireplace, and I remember I loved this pair of pants. I had a set of brown corduroys that I loved. They were so warm. And my last conscious thought was, I'm standing too close to the fire. I literally was almost in it. And I didn't want to crinkle, or do any damage to the fabric of the corduroy. And my last thought was, why am I not warm? Why can't I get warm? And then my father dropped his fork, and it hit the china plate. And I looked up, and he's staring at me, but he wasn't actually staring at me. He was staring to my right, to his left, my right. And he said, Annie, someone's come to welcome you home. And this is, by that time, he was a believer too. He had no choice.
Yeah.
He had no choice to admit it, none. But I knew it and I felt it, and the whole right side of my body felt like a solid slab of ice. It just felt dead, the whole right side. And I couldn't really move my body, but I could turn my head. And I turned my head and I stared into a mirror image reflection of myself as an old woman, and
What?
dressed in 17th century clothing, gray hair, all swept up in a bun, my exact eyes, exact facial features. And she smiled, and she had my identical smile. And then she was gone. And nobody in my family saw her face except me. They saw her, but from a side profile. She was standing facing me. And it was the kindest, most loving smile. I can't even tell you the warmth that I got warm just seeing her, but I also had a chill knowing that I was most likely we were back in that house. Uh, and I say back in that house, and that I think that at least one of us has had more than one experience or multiple dimensional experiences in that house. And I can't explain it. I wish that I could. I just turned 57 and I don't know anything more about what I saw in that house now than I did when I was 12 and saw my first full body apparition. I can't tell you what it is. It is. That's all that matters to me. That's what's miraculous, is that it is. What's miraculous to me is that I can live every day with the comfort of knowing that when I perish, I will go on. And I can't think of anything more comforting. As for skeptics, as for people that are naysayers, I think that the ones that are most vitriolic about it are the ones that are most afraid that we're absolutely telling the truth. And they are nothing but fear-based carbon units. And it is their own personal fear that causes them to attack our family. Because our story is plausible, our story is real, and there are millions of people around the entire globe that have had intense supernatural experiences. It's not like we're the only 7 on the planet.
Right.
So my attitude is, take your spewing venom someplace else. Go pick on somebody else. This is our story to tell. And we waited more than 30 years so that the world would mature spiritually enough to be able to accept it. At least some people can accept it. And, it's been the most important thing for me personally is the number of people that have written to me and said, I had this experience when I was a kid and I never told anybody in my family. I never told my spouse when I grew up and got married. I never told anyone until I read your books. And now I tell everyone, because if your family had the courage to tell your story, then I need to have the courage to tell mine. And it has liberated me completely from my fear of what I experienced. And I hear that basic paraphrased scenario in letter after letter after letter coming from, 5 different continents. So it has made a difference in the world, whatever modicum of difference it has made. The thing is that this story, I think, is eternal. And it is truly a spiritual journey. It's an odyssey. It's not just a series of scary stories. Tony, you've read it,
Yeah.
I mean, this is a deep investigation into what happened to us. I didn't see the point in just telling a series of scary stories. I wanted to know the who, what, when, what, why, and how.
Yeah.
How could this happen? I explored it from every conceivable angle. I explored it scientifically. I explored it mathematically. I explored it philosophically, theologically, from every angle that I knew how to. I really do believe that when I left the farm to go to college and would have to be away for 8 months out of the year to get my proper education, that the line of education that I pursued was to help me explain the experiences that I had in the farm, that my family had in the farm. Because to be a philosophy major, you have to study every major religion on the planet, including atheism,
Yeah.
which is in its own right a belief system. It is.
Right.
It's a belief in a non-belief of God.
Hmm.
So it's it's what brought that area. And when we left church, I mean, the church basically said to us, you know, go worship someplace else. The priest was afraid. He asked my father to please take his family to worship elsewhere. And we never went back to church after that as a family. We never did. Um, but Cindy, I think, put it aptly. And she said, where we lived was church. We
Mm.
lived in church. We lived in the house of the Holy Spirits.
Mm.
Most of them were absolutely benign or benevolent. It was only the one female spirit that perceived my mother in some way to be a threat, and it wasn't Bathsheba Sharman. It was probably Mrs. John Arnold, and she hung herself in the barn when she was 93 years old in 1797, I think. No, and I don't care if anybody questions that. All I know is that what I saw, what my mother saw, what Cindy saw, what Christine saw, four of us saw this apparition of the seven. And she clearly had a broken neck. And she spoke in a language that was archaic in Bathsheba's times. Bathsheba was born in 1812. She died in 1885. The spirit that spoke to my mother used language that was in use in the 17 and 1600s. Um, so I think it's pretty obvious that
Yeah.
it wasn't. I'm not saying Bathsheba was the nicest spirit. And I'll tell you, she was really bent out of shape about the movie. She had lots of issues and created havoc on the set,
Mm.
and in our lives, because she was a vain woman in life, and she's vain in death. I mean, believe me, she's retained that characteristic, and she was very unhappy. Not that she was being accused of committing murder. She was unhappy because a man was playing in her role, and she didn't want a man to play her. She was very offended by that.
That's it.
So,
So this is bringing up something for me. Just a question about the understanding and the knowledge. They say knowledge is power, right? And if
It
you
is.
if you know if you know the spirits and you understand them and what they want and who they are, does it make it easier to live with? Does it make it easier to
Yes.
deal with them, like less scary, less hair raising, so to speak?
Yes, it is. And, it was once we acknowledged them, really acknowledged them, um, things settled down. And after my mother had her moment of epiphany, where she realized that we were sharing space with probably a multitude who, for whatever reason, were able to bridge, there really is no veil. That's something that the human beings self impose so that we can live in a three-dimensional, five-sensory realm, which is not really the truth of us.
mhm.
But there really is no veil. There is certainly no veil in that house. And once she came to understand that, it made it a lot easier for her, and she really started working her way back to us. But yeah, it was very important that we acknowledge them, because that seemed to bring some semblance of peace in the later years that we lived at the house. And we honestly thought, I mean, none of us expected it, when my mother told my father that she wouldn't survive another year in the house and another winter,
Mm.
and that the house had to be sold. And they put it on the market, and it languished for months. And she didn't even tell me. I was off in my senior year of school, and she didn't even tell me. And nobody came to look at it. The spirits were like, it's like they made the advertisement for it invisible in the paper. Nobody called on it. Nobody came to look at it. Nothing.
Were
And,
they
as my mother, what, honey?
Were the spirits, were they angry when they found out that you guys were gonna be leaving?
Yeah,
Because like they got
yeah,
used to you guys being there.
yep, yep. They were as used to us as we had gotten to them, apparently. And, I can't say that is absolute truth, but that was my sense of things.
Okay.
But my father went to the abutting landowners and gave them a very sweet deal on the farm so that their hundreds of acres could, be back to back with our hundreds of acres. And my sister Nancy was so angry. She was their babysitter, and she went to them and she said, I'll stay on as your caretaker while you do all the work in the house, everything. I don't want to leave the farm. I can't believe I'll never forgive my parents for selling the farm. I mean, to this day, she's furious with them. I don't think she'll ever forgive them for selling the farm.
So you guys became really attached.
Yeah. Attached is a real good word, and we're about to explore that just a little bit. It fractured our family. Half of us never wanted to leave, and I was in that half, and half of us never wanted to look back. And that would have been Cindy, Christine, and my mother. They wanted to be done with it, be gone with it, and never look back, never go back, nothing. Christine and Cindy have subsequently gone back. My mother has never. And she lived up there for years and years in Massachusetts, right on the Rhode Island border. She could have gone anytime she wanted to. She had numerous invitations, and she never took it up. She meant it when she said, I'll never step foot back on this property. But I will tell you this. We thought that when we left the farm, we were leaving them behind. And we could not have been more wrong about that.
I was just going to ask you that, like, if you still have experiences to this day.
I've never stopped having experiences since I was 12 years old.
When you there was a little while ago when we were actually talking to you, you were saying you were getting a message. Was that kind of like what you meant, like by experiences? You said like you were getting a message. Like I don't know if you remember that, but
I do.
Can you explain that? What that was? Do you want to go into that? You seem a little like hesitant.
I have well, I didn't know if we'd even get into this subject today, but I think that everything is one thing and that all spiritual activity is correlated and integrated. And I have had numerous contacts with extraterrestrials over the course of my life. And what I just heard in my ear was just a really small download. They feed me information all the time, and it goes directly into my subconscious mind. I don't have a conscious recollection of what I was told, but it generally, and I think there's an awful lot of people on this planet that mistake extraterrestrial downloading for tinnitus. I swear to God. I do. But believe me, that's, for me, the spirits are almost old hat. Yeah. To me, all my research, all my personal development, all my curiosity, everything is there.
Yeah.
I want to know. I want more and more and more contact. I make sure that I have some every day. It's very easy. I used to say, well, they don't come when called. Well, yes, they do. If you talk to them enough, believe me when I tell you, when you put that message out, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I don't give a damn who believes me or not. I am going to be validated and vindicated about this so soon that I don't care who says, oh my God, is she a nut job? I don't care because I know that they're here and they're indigenous to the planet the same way we are.
It's funny because I actually, that's another interest of mine is kind of like, the UFO, extraterrestrial kind of area. And like, I've been reading a lot and listening to a lot of videos with Dr. Stephen Greer. I'm not sure.
Oh, I love Steve. Oh, Steve is a great guy.
Right.
And Steve Bassett. And make sure you check out Paul T. Hellier, the former defense minister of Canada, will blow your mind. These people are my friends. These people are my friends. And I lecture. I'm going out to the Star Work Symposium in Nevada for a few days in Laughlin, Nevada. And I had in November, the middle of November, and I had some extraordinary experiences there last year. I can't wait to get back. Yeah. I can't even wait to get back. I mean, it's so great. then when you've got all the ET people together, it's amazing. They know what we're doing. They know where we are. And all kinds of great stuff happens. That's going to be the highlight of my year, is going to the Starworks Symposium. Again, I lectured there last year, and in fact, my lecture is out on YouTube.
I'll have to check that out, definitely. Well, I just want to take the time to thank you for coming on and letting us ask you all these questions and giving us a lot more information than I thought we expected. It was really awesome.
That was great.
Yeah.
Let me just get one more thing, more question for you. With everything that you've been through, right, and all the stuff that you've experienced, and I mean, I gotta say, very courageous, very brave. Is there anything that somebody can write, produce, direct, whatever creative medium they're going to use? Is there anything that anybody can do to scare you right now? Is there anything that's man-made or written that would give you chills, or has there been since this happened?
I'm going to tell you the God's honest truth. I like vampires, but I don't consider vampire movies scary movies. I think of vampire movies as sexy movies.
Okay. Well, not the
that's
Strain.
My idea.
The Strain, right? That's not. Those aren't sexy vampires.
The Strain, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm very careful and very selective about films that I watch, because I know that is a very powerful medium, and that you can get images impaled in your mind that you never get rid of. Right. So I'm very careful. I tend to watch Hollywood musicals. I'm big into stage shows and stuff like that, straight theater. But the first start to finish horror film I ever saw in my entire life was The Conjuring. I've not seen The Exorcist. Wow. I've not seen the others. I've not seen, you name it. You name the scary movie. I have not seen it. I do not put that into my brain. I am from the school of been there, done that. I do not need to go into a theater to get scared, nor do I like the feeling of adrenaline surging through my veins. I just don't like it. Okay. So I have a tendency, as my mother says, honey, you have to understand that the way that you were raised, you did see the darkness, but I applaud you for choosing to live in the light. It is a deliberate choice to live in the light. It is. To live on the bright side, to look on the bright side of everything. And George Lopez, my partner, my para partner, he's always like, oh my God, you're going to wear out your rose-colored glasses. Oh my God, the way I look at the world. But, for the most part, I am supremely hopeful. I think that we really are at a turning point in the world. I think that all of these stories are coming to light to expand human consciousness. A mind expanded does not retract. Right. And so, we're all growing and evolving and learning, and the most important evolution for us is spiritual. And so, I don't pollute my brain with blood and gore, and, especially because so many of these films glorify violence against women. And I have a real big issue with that. A huge issue with that. I'm afraid that our society has regressed to the point where it's open season on women and children. And I fight for that. That's one of my passionate causes. I am a voice for the voiceless and a defender of the defenseless. And I will be for the rest of my life, regardless of whether or not I'm talking about paranormal stuff or not. Now I have a venue. Now I have an audience. And I'm grateful for that, because now I feel like I can make more of a difference. But every morning I go out and I say to them, good morning, and thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
So I got one more question for you, and then I think we'll kind of end everything.
Well, not everything. Just this interview.
Just this interview. Yeah,
you are so cute. You should keep him.
He's going to take the opportunity to bust me. So it's a simple question, but we agreed we wanted to ask you was, being that it's October, what are you going to be for Halloween this year?
Oh, it is Rocktober, baby. It is Rocktober.
Yeah.
When I tell you this, you're not even going to believe it. First of all, our family's episode, based on the books
Mm-hmm.
of Paranormal Witness, airs on Wednesday the 28th at 10 o'clock. On Thursday the 29th, I will be at the Witches Ball with Miss Anne Rice.
Oh,
And,
whoa, that's awesome.
and
Wow.
we'll be premiering my new book called In a Flicker with George Lopez, my co-author. This was his idea. The man is a genius. He is brilliant beyond any belief. This story is so compelling, it will curl your hair. My readers are going to pass out when they read it because it's not anything more. It's nothing they expect from me. Nothing they expect from me. But, I have such a belief in the importance of George telling this story that I pitched in 18 months ago and took what came to me as roughly a screenplay directly out of his mind from the movie that he'd been running in his head as he developed the storyline and its characters over the course of a quarter of a century. When he told me the story, I said, "You have to write this down. You have to write it down." And he said, "I'm not a writer." And I said, "Well, I am. And I will do anything in my power to make sure that this story comes to light." And we worked diligently together over the course of 18 months, and it went to print today.
Awesome.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We will be premiering it at the Undead Con in New Orleans over Halloween weekend, and that's where I'll be.
And will it be available on iBook? I mean, is it iBooks? Yeah, iBooks.
iBooks, yeah.
iBooks and the what is the other thing? The Kindle bookstore.
Yes. Yeah, it takes them a couple of weeks to get it formatted for all the different e-readers, but it will be available probably in the next 3 or 4 days in soft cover and hardcover through Amazon, through Author House, my publisher, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, just like all my other books. But the e-readers, they have to format them. Each one of them is different. So they have to reformat the story to fit that particular style of e-reader, and that takes a little bit longer.
And you said it's called In a Flicker?
In a Flicker, and it's going to blow the lid off not only the paranormal community, but just people who are interested in mysteries, people are interested in, I can't tell you much about it. To tell you much about it tells you too much.
Okay.
Because it's about a very, very famous case in history. And it's an amalgamation of historical fact and fiction.
Okay.
The characters are fictional. The facts are the facts of history. Comes directly out of the history books. And it is a mesmerizing, fascinating, horrifying tale that is so gruesome that nobody who knows me is going to understand how I could even have touched it, let alone helped with it. But I had to, because once you read it, once you get all through this book, you're going to be like, that's why she did it. That's why.
So what's better for you as a writer, for your readers to purchase the hard copy or digital, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me, I'm really not money based. I'm not. I mean, I've always gotten along fine in life. I'll always get along fine in life. It's like manna from heaven falls on me whenever I need it. It's not about being rich and famous for me. It's really not. I was all grown up when I wrote these books. I didn't expect to be the next J.K. Rowling. I'm not dealing in that realm. That's right. Fantasy. That's Harry Potter. That's one in a million stories that goes like that. I don't care how people get it. I just want them to get the message attached to it. And that's why I went with Author House, so I would have complete control over the manuscript. I would own our own story. No trade publisher would own it and be able to do whatever they wanted to do to make sure that it was amenable to their bottom line. I took the whole responsibility of it on my own shoulders. So, pass or fail, sink or swim, it was on me. And so I think I was more brave about that than actually telling the story, because I had offers, of trade publishers who are like, yeah, we'll take it, but then we're going to slice and dice it. We're going to turn it into a series of scary stories. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. I'll do this on my own. Thank you very much.
Right.
And there were great sacrifices that were made by my family. I was 3 years into the project and ran out of money. I had no more money left. Nothing. I had gone through all my savings, all my everything. I was gone. I sold my car. I mean, I was awful, and I wasn't done yet. You want to know panic? You want to know, like, oh my God, oh my God. And my family and my friends carried me, through the whole process to the end of it. And of course, then it was a big hit and the books were selling well, and I was able to reimburse everybody for their investment in me and the project. And, I'm all squared away now, but it's not about the money for me. It's about the message and changing the world and raising the consciousness of humanity. That's what it's about for me. Honest to God, you can look in my eyes and see I'm telling you the truth.
Awesome.
Well, I just want to thank you again for everything. It was awesome, so much more than we could have asked for. So thank you so much, Andrea. You're awesome as always, and I really appreciate your time.
I want to see you next time in Rhode Island. I don't care what, no excuses. You find me, I'll be in touch with you. I'll let you know when I'm coming. Definitely. And we're going out and having dinner, because you are really a remarkable man, a wonderful man, a talented man, and you obviously have good friends. Definitely. So he can come too.
Definitely.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I will definitely meet up, I promise.
Yeah, I can't
wait.
Okay,
good. I'll hold you to it, bud. I will.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and good luck at the convention in October with Anne Rice. That's going to be awesome.
It's gonna rock-tober, baby. It's yeah. I'm psyched. I'm so psyched, and then I'm going to sleep for the month of December.
Right, so, definitely. So, all right. Well, I'll let you go. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care. Love you guys.
Bye.
Take care. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye.